So about 10 years before my father died from throat cancer, he fell and broke his leg on the job at the old Boston and Maine Railroad in Deerfield. He was drunk at the time. He was drunk most of the time back then, but they didn't have very good drug testing in the 70s, and they couldn't prove anything. And so the six-figure settlement he ultimately received changed our circumstances significantly. One big change for me personally was that I got to attend some fancy private schools in the Pioneer Valley. Now, when I got there, they told me, be worthy of your heritage. In assemblies and lunch announcements and graduations and everything, we were inundated by this message. Before then, I never really knew that I had a heritage, and I didn't really ever think to try to be worthy of anything. My adoptive parents had two big hearts, but only one high school diploma between them. So they weren't really big indoctrinators. You know, they mostly told me to be good and do my best. So when I showed up on this magnificent campus and this bevy of Brooks Brothers clad middle-aged white men admonished me constantly to be worthy of my heritage, I was in. It sounded so significant and impressive, you know? Now, eventually I figured out that being worthy of your heritage had an awful lot to do with, you know, privilege and entitlement and wealth disparity, but for a while at least, I believed I was part of something bigger, something special. And I was. It just wasn't necessarily my school. What the Blue Blazered folks wanted me to believe, and mind you, there were a lot of good teachers there who helped me and had my best interests at heart, but what I think they were selling was this notion that I had a standard to uphold. Lose a football game? Unworthy. B- on a test? Not part of our heritage, young man. And I bought it. You know, school and sports had always gone pretty well for me, so it was easy for me to accept their rules and guidelines and kind of ignore the rest. But I was never really one of them, you know? Guys would come back from vacations talking about sandy beach encounters with bikini-clad beauties, and I'd sit there all shy and quiet, and if anyone asked me the dreaded question, what'd you do on your break? I'd have to talk vaguely about the landscaping job I worked to pay for new tires on my rusty '78 Camaro. Settlement or no settlement, tropical beaches in March were decidedly not part of our family legacy. But ultimately, it was okay. I was happy most of the time. I learned a lot. I made some good friends. You know, I never quite fit in, but it was all right. You know, I eventually learned to own my otherness. My big gesture of protest was to eschew those expensive blue blazers and instead wear a bright red jacket straight off the rack from J.C. Penney's. I did well enough to get into a pretty good college, and the trajectory of my life has been mostly positive ever since. So while I think that, you know, so far at least, I think I've lived a relatively worthy life, my heritage has nothing to do with country clubs or vineyard vines. My heritage is a loving couple that couldn't care for me as they struggled with poverty and addiction and made the selfless decision to give me up for adoption when I was 2 weeks old. My heritage is not one, but two alcoholic fathers, both of whom got sober and lived better second halves of their lives. My heritage is a doting mother and a bent-legged father who, in a way, literally gave his life for my benefit. You see, back in 1988, when I was all set to ship off to that good college that I'd gotten into, Dad's union was on strike from the same railroad where he broke his leg. Our health insurance lapsed as the strike dragged on. So Dad delayed going to see the doctor about this pain that had developed in his neck. And so the undetected tumor causing that pain grew unchecked. He died 6 months into my freshman year. Now, like most things in life, it's complicated, of course, but I know that at least partly, Dad died because he didn't want mounting medical bills to eat into our tuition fund and keep me from attending college. So I guess I am part of a worthy heritage after all, one that I aspire to every day. I am descended from flawed, good men who wrestled with their demons, who prioritized their son's well-being, and who never wore a single blue blazer in their lives. Thank you.